Good evening, ladies. And I first want to take the time to acknowledge how brave you are and how courageous you are to value yourself and to connecting with Nicole in the program. That speaks volumes. And I want you to take some time and acknowledge yourself for that and give yourself grace. It's not easy. I will share that I was married for almost 20 years to the only boyfriend I've had in my life. And I can tell you that when I fell in love with him, I believe that, hey, I only one man in my life. I was a virgin, and I, to me, that was the biggest gift I could give him, my virginity. And I was going to be a woman with only one man, not realizing the type of beast that I was going to be making life with, right? Throughout the marriage, my ex-husband is a reverend, a minister. Found myself where religion played a big role, where his behavior started shifting into the fifth year of the marriage. We moved to Virginia, and that's where he was doing his master's in theology. And come to find out, he was having affairs with his classmates who also were seminary students, right? So I found myself forgiving him for these affairs. I thought that, hey, this is just an attack from the enemy. I'm just going to pray. I'm going to fast. I'm going to go home. I'm going to believe, that we're going to overcome through this. This is just going to be a great story. Not realizing that when I asked him for the divorce, the summer of before our 10th year anniversary, I believed him. He was crying, saying, I love you. I'm so sorry, and I accepted him back. And that's when things actually continue getting worse. Not only was he having affairs, I can share with you guys that he would disappear on me. He would tell me, you're crazy. I'm going to these conferences, be gone for 3-4 days, and then come home with bloodshot eyes. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, you're away from your wife 3-4 days. You want me. And of course, no, he did not. He slept. And I was in denial. I really was in denial. And it got to the point where in December of 2011, I had my own business. I owned my house. He had started his own fitness training studio, and I had invested money into that. Suddenly, I find out that we were in debt. He was not paying the mortgage on that. He wasn't paying the mortgage on my house, and things were being repossessed. And he tells me we have to move to Miami, Florida, which is where I grew up and where we met in college. And I wasn't allowed to tell anyone, none of my friends, that we were going to move. I was only allowed to tell one friend. I lied to my parents and my business because I had a daycare, telling them that he had gotten a job at the University of Miami, which was where he had gotten a degree. And I told my dad a lie, saying, Daddy, we need to move into your home because, we always wanted to move back to Miami after he got his degree. And I literally left with 5 kids and the truck and whatever I could fit in there, like a thief at night, afraid of telling anyone what was happening. During that time, my ex-husband would just tell me I was not allowed to tell anyone, that I needed to trust him. And I totally lost my voice. And I allowed him to manipulate me. Find myself moving to Miami, into my dad's house. My dad confronts me and tells me that man is abusing you. And what did I do? I totally defended him with tooth and nail, like, no, Daddy, he's stressed, that we lost the home, the business, just give him some chance. And finding myself burning bridges with family that was confronting me. So I can totally relate when it comes to having to defend and make excuses for him, because I did that. So I realized that my father's health was really being affected. And my ex-husband used some money from income tax, and we moved to a home. And in that home, guess what happened? We got evicted. We ended up bouncing to another home. And in that home, it was horrible. We literally lived in the hood. There, he would come under some sort of like drug kind of influence. The demand on sex was incredible that he would have on me. It was exhausting. And if I wouldn't have sex with him, he would get angry. And it got to a point where I got pregnant. And he attacked me. He pinned me to the bedpost and was banging me, my abdomen, and I miscarried. My parents were not even 10 minutes away, and I didn't dare to call because I was prideful. I didn't want my family to know what I was living, even though they knew. I was ashamed. I was ashamed. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I can't tell him he did this to me. What's even more crazy is that I allowed myself to get pregnant again with a sixth child. And we ended up moving to Illinois into a basement in his brother's house. And that's when things really continued getting worse. He would tell us that he was suicidal. My kids would be crying. He would tell me that, I was old, I was dried up, nobody would want me. I gave birth to the baby in a cold basement. We returned. He would disappear, finding out he was having affairs, and I just wouldn't call home and say, hey, mommy, hey, daddy, help me out. The worst part about it is the fact that I got attacked. He ripped my clothes off in his brother's living room, broke the chair I was sitting on. I reached out to his parents, and what they did was they put me in a hotel room for a week so he can kind of, chill. And when I came back, this man tells me, the reason why I ripped your clothes out is because you did not give me the keys to the van. And I'm telling him, why would you do that? The fact that I did not give you the keys, you defiled me. And he had no guilt over the fact that he tore my clothes. I cannot express in words just how I continue believing that God would change him. Living in that basement, I created like this bubble around my 5 kids and infant child. I know that one thing that kept me was the fact that I always prayed and I always spoke God's promises over my life. I was in so much fear. The fact that he would just suddenly get outraged and start hitting the walls, and I was dealing with postpartum depression from from my 6th child, and the reality that this man was just not able to keep a job, and I'm here trying to figure out how am I supposed to navigate. I couldn't even afford Pampers. I started potty training my youngest child at 3 months, and believe me, it's possible. You can potty train an infant child. I did it because I had no money. After having all these things, I lost everything, but it was okay. That's what I thought. It's okay, because guess what? I'll get to have an opportunity for God to get the glory from my story. My husband's going to be transformed. He's going to change his way from wicked ways. I was still in denial. He ended up moving to Orlando. He left us behind, and it was horrific. Here I was with 5 kids and an infant child. I found myself a job at Target. My oldest daughter would take care of her 4-month-old youngest sibling. I would shop at the Goodwill, but it wasn't even the Goodwill. It was like a store above a lady's house that she would get clothes, and she would tell me, here, come, just pick what you need for your children. I couldn't afford to buy clothes for my kids. I actually had my kids at the University of Illinois to do like education programs. So what they do is that they invite kids to like read certain books and to watch certain images and see what their responses are. So they could actually, and then they'll pay the parents. So I was making money that way, getting my kids involved in programs from the university so I could have a little bit of money. But it got to the point where I could tell his brother, who I was living in his house, no one ever addressed, why did you attack Jessy? Why did you rip her clothes off? Why are you being so abusive? None of that. His family never, to my knowledge, confronted him in front of me. But it got to a point where his brother got exhausted of me living in his basement with his children. Now, the trauma my children went through was horrific, having to live in that cold basement where I would have to have a heater with the coils, and I would have to put my infant child in that little pan when you give birth that they give you, warm that water, go ahead and squat down and bathe my baby there and wrap him up. It was cold in that basement. However, somehow his family was like, we can try to move you down to Orlando so you can try to get back with, with my husband, my ex-husband then. And I didn't have any money. So guess what I did? I had a garage sale smack in the middle of winter in central Illinois. I had all my stuff scattered in front. And whenever it snowed, I would put a blanket. And when it stopped snowing, I would take it off. And I was determined to make $200. Do you hear me? $200. I hustled so many books, my daughter's bike, the baby's stroller. I mean, I sat in that lawn chair, freezing my butt off. And people were looking at me like I was crazy. And guess what? I was. It was crazy faith because I knew that I was going to get those $200. And I promised my daughter, Genesis, I'll tell you, my children would say, Mama does not promise, but I made one promise. And that promise was, we're going to move to Orlando. Mama's going to get a job. We're going to have a car and we're going to have our own home. Wow. And I came through. I got the $200. At that time, his dad did get a van and his brother moved us all down. I stayed with my sister, my brother's widow. And guess what I did? Instead of moving there and being alone and trying to get myself together, I reached out to him and I was like, you know what? You can move in with us. I was still in denial. So I understand when you ladies are trying to leave your abuser and you somehow find yourself feeling empathetic, saying, you know what, though, let me help him. You know, let me support him. I still love him. There's still a chance. When I had every support possible, living with my brother's widow and every government aid possible as well to start all over again. But no, I brought him in. I brought him in. And the abuse continued where he would barely make any money. I found myself a job at the liquor store, trying to just figure out what am I going to do moving to Orlando. I have a son with autism and he would really pick on him all the time. It was both him and I, all the time, both him and I, he would pick on. And we had this huge fight because he told my son that you're better off being a girl than a boy. And he was, what, 7 years old? So we went off. So when you were sharing, Nicole, earlier about, you know, just your narcissist partner that you were in the shower, I had that experience. I thought the argument was over. I was taking a shower. I was all bubbled up. And this man opens the curtain, puts his fist up in my face. And at that moment, I literally saw like my life pass before me. No one had ever addressed me that way. And I froze. I froze. And I had my brother's widow living in that house with her mom and my nieces. And everyone was afraid. I could have called the police. I did not. I froze. I totally froze. So during that time, I had gotten a job at booking.com. And I was so excited because I had no money. Every little money I made, I would give it to my sister-in-law because I lived with her. And they accidentally hired me as a Portuguese speaker because I speak Spanish. And they gave me $500 as a bonus. So when they pulled me aside and they're like, hey, Jessy, listen, you shouldn't don't tell anyone, which I'm telling y'all now, but we accidentally gave you this bonus. It's yours. We can't take it away. I started crying because they had no idea that they actually had empowered me with a little bit of money, a little bit of money. So that summer of 2015, I decided to just bounce from hotel to hotel to try to leave him. That was, summer 2015. He still managed to lure me back in September of 2015. He would tell me, I love you, all of those good things. And, you know, we're better off together. You know, DCF is going to try to take the kids, Jessy. And I went back. I moved into a home with him that September of 2015. And sure enough, guess who was paying the mortgage or the rent? I was the one paying the rent. He couldn't find a job. He always made excuses why he couldn't get hired. During that time, the level of the way sex was just so painful. I didn't realize that I was being a victim of marital rape. The fact that I felt filthy, I felt dirty, even the scent of him. And I realized I can't keep doing this. And in March of 2016, he was training one of our children. I was at work, and my son, who had autism, he made him run so fast and wouldn't give him any water that my son collapsed and ended up in the hospital with a heat stroke, body temperature 108. His organs were shutting down, and my son was unconscious. And when he picks me up, his explanation was it was just a freak accident. So as I'm getting to the hospital, the nurse calls me and tells me, that last name I had, Cross, we have to rush your son to Arnold Palmer because he is still unconscious. And when I find out the extremity of how my son arrived, I'm looking at this man like, are you kidding me? So when I show up to the hospital, my son is on a stretcher and I'm trying to understand what's happening. We rush over to Arnold Palmer and I'm telling the social workers, this is child abuse. I am in a domestic violent marriage. This man has hurt us. No one heard me. We had social workers came out. They're like, your home is safe. And I'm like, this is bigger than what you see. I told his family, I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm like, you guys know what he's doing to us. They disappeared. They disappeared. And I found myself walking out of that hospital room with my son and my ex-husband. But when I went back into that home, I made a decision on that March 10th that I was going to leave him. I was exhausted. I was exhausted, having to deal with the gaslighting, having to realize that everything that I wanted, he was just the priority. The fact that whenever Jessy wanted to pursue something, it was like, you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You don't have the degrees, because he has all this education, all these degrees. And he would just like not allow me to validate the fact that I have value, that I matter, that I'm an intelligent, brilliant woman. It was always belittling me and making me second guess the decisions I wanted to make in my life. But on July 4th, 2016, I knew I had to leave that man. I didn't know where I was going to go. All I know is that when he told me we were being evicted because I chose to stop paying the rent that March, I'm like, I'm not paying one more dollar. I had to save my money. And when I find out that we were going to be evicted, I reached out to my dad and I was like, Daddy, I'm like, can you help? And my father said, I have no money. You're on your own. My father is my hero. My father has never said no to me, but that was the biggest disappointment I could have. But I understood that I had to step up for myself. So somehow, a girlfriend from 1996, when I was in college, here we are, 2016, we somehow connected Messenger, Facebook, and I'm telling her all that I'm going through, and I'm crying like, I have to leave him. I have no idea where I'm going to go. And she tells me, you know what? We have a timeshare. Why don't you and the kids go there for that week? So that's where that morning of July the 4th, and I'm going to tell you, I second guessed myself for a hot second. As I was walking towards my ex-husband and I see him laying with my youngest child, for a hot second, it was like, you're about to take this baby and your kids away from the dad. But then I realized that I had to do it because that cycle had to end. I had to understand that what was before me was much greater than what I was living behind. That I could no longer continue living in that hellhole where he would get so angry and start shouting at 5 o'clock in the morning. If I wasn't having sex with him, he would start screaming, and to the point where he would say, you don't. And my kids would ask me later in the day, Mom, why was Daddy saying? Can you believe that? That's the kind of crap that my children would hear 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I could not. The screaming, calling the police will come out and say, hey, listen, you need to be gone for 2 hours. And he'll return and he'll still continue with the shouting. It was exhausting. It was exhausting. And he would tell me, you're a quitter if you leave. No one's going to want a woman with 6 kids. You're old. You're dried up. You're used goods. He says, you're going to come back crawling back. You're going to fall flat on your face. These were all these things this man would say to me when he realized I had shifted and I was going to leave. And my response when he would tell me you're a quitter, I'm like, I'm a quitter if I stay. And I'm not going to quit on my life. So on that 4th of July, I tapped that man and I said, we need to talk outside. And I told him, I'm going to get a U-Haul truck. Whatever little things we can put in that U-Haul truck, I'm going to take. But the children and I are leaving. That man's response was, where are you going? I said, does it matter? Because if you cared, you would have paid for the rent. He said, okay. So I drove in my car to the U-Haul. We got it. And on the way that we're driving back, he was like, I love you, Jessy. I love you, Jessy. Jessy, you know you want to be with me. And my oldest daughter, Genesis, would look at me and shake her head, like, don't believe it. And she would text me and say, he thinks you're bluffing. Follow through. His own daughter, because she knew what we were living. So we got in my U-Haul truck. I was able to go drop these things off. You would think Jessy had money. I did not. I did not have any money. I didn't know how I was going to feed these 6 kids. Yeah, I had some food stamp, but when you're living in a hotel for a week, there's no refrigerator, there's no kitchen. Believe me, it's just ham, cheese, and bread, and that's it. And sometimes not even cheese because it can go bad. And I'm staying in this hotel for this week. I have no idea where I'm going the second week. My kids are asking me, Mama, where are we going? I'm like, I don't know. I said, we're just going to trust God. Then a couple from Virginia, where I used to live, came down for vacation in Orlando, and they think I'm on vacation. And I'm telling them my situation, and they're like, you know what, Jessy? Ricky and I are going to pay my girlfriend, Giovanna, they're like, we're going to pay for 1 week for you to stay at this other hotel. So when you want to talk about walk by faith, I never lost hope, ladies. And believe me, there was fear of going back. And I went to that hotel the second week. Here we're staying the second week. Now, during this time, I'm still working. I'm homeschooling my kids on their 6th year because I knew that our situation couldn't allow for me to put them in any kind of, school system. Having to tell them, hey, listen, you guys have to stay in this apartment. Do not come out, because when you're staying in hotels, you sometimes have, pedophiles. You have people who, it's dangerous. So I'm warning my children, y'all need to stay. I'm hiding kids because in one room, you're not supposed to have 7 people. So we stay in that hotel room the second week. And a girlfriend reaches out from booking.com that she had gotten fired, and I had really supported her during that season. Says, hey, Jess, I have a 3-bedroom townhome. You can stay in one of the bedrooms for you and the 6 kids. And here God provided again. So I was bold. I trusted God. And was I afraid? Absolutely. But did I believe that there was more for me? Yes. Because God did not create us to live in oppression. God did not create us to live in fear. God did not create us to live in bondage. And I'm a woman of faith. And Jesus died at the cross so we would have life and life abundantly and not be held bound by the iniquities of another, to have freedom, to be free and free indeed. I had to continue speaking his promises, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, that I'm his beloved, that I've been created for greatness, that I am co-heir to the kingdom with my brother Jesus, because guess what? I am royalty. We are queens. We are warriors. I spoke all of these things until my life during a time I didn't know what was next. So I stayed on my girlfriend in her bedroom at her townhome. Her and her husband were so amazing that they were trying to help me find an apartment. And that was during July 2016. So all of this is happening like boom, boom, boom. And we get an IRS check, and it's with both of our names. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, listen, I need your signature. You can't have half of it. You can have, I think it was about $6,000. I think that the IRS check was for. You can have about 2, but I'll keep the rest because I have the children. He agreed. We met at the Amscot. Suddenly, I'm in my car. He gets in my vehicle and he tells me, well, I'm not doing that. It's half and half. And I'm telling him, no, we're not. We're not going to do that. This man stepped out of my truck and started hitting himself with the door to call the police, saying that I was hurting him. I jumped out my car crying, ran into the Amscot, telling them, look at what he's doing. I need you to see that I am here, because he's calling the police saying that I am hurting him and is going to accuse me of violence. So of course the police shows up. He starts telling them, and then I had a witness. The police makes me give him half of the check. I did that. But it was just to show you how they'll come back and they'll agree, like, sure, let's do that. But they are always going to find a way to flip it around and always have the control one way or another. So I finally moved into my apartment on August 8th, 2016. And I'm thinking, hey, listen, things are coming together. I decided to file for divorce. That's where, with the other beautiful lady who said she had her documents, I had all my documents. I had paid $199. And guess what? I couldn't follow through. So I can totally understand where you are. I couldn't. I couldn't follow through with the documents. I kept thinking, I'm going to be a divorced woman. My dad has 3 daughters. I'm the youngest of 7 and 4 boys. One is a widow. One has been married for over almost 30 years. And I'm going to be the only one that's divorced. I felt ashamed. Like I'm going to be the broken one. And I chose not to file that summer. I didn't. And I just worked hard. I promised my kids we're going to have our place. We were going to have our own car. Mama had her job. And on September 10th, 2017, Hurricane Irma hits Orlando. And while we're in the apartment, the ceiling collapsed on us. And our neighbors from downstairs, I'm on the 3rd floor, came running in telling us, you guys have to get out. The second half of the eye is coming. And we're trying to gather every little bit that we can. I'm in disbelief that this is happening to me. One of my son, who has autism, he was in such a shock. He was eating dried ramen noodles. And I'm trying to tell him, I'm like, Chronicles, you got to move. And the neighbor downstairs who had fostering twins, and her husband, so 4 people already live in a 2-bedroom. She opens her door for 7. And while my kids and I are in one of the rooms, which was baby's room, you could hear the wind just blowing and knocking things out. And my children were like, Mama, what are we going to do? And I had to tell them, we're going to trust God. And you could just hear things just like the woof, woof, just the whole noise of the hurricane. And the next morning, when I went up to the 3rd floor and opened the door to my apartment, everything was scattered. Everything that I had in my mind, hey, I just worked for this, God. It's been a year. What's happening? And when I walked into my boys' room, there was this big old hole. And the sun is just beaming. It's hot. And those of you who have been, the aftermath of a hurricane is so much humidity and stickiness. And I was just in such a disbelief. But the Lord said, he spoke to me and he said, you were praying for me to open up doors for you, because the children and I would pray like, Lord, open doors so we could be able to move somewhere else, because that area in Kissimmee was not the best that I lived here in Orlando. I wanted to move somewhere else for, for safety and all. And he said, you were asking me to open up doors for you, but I'm such an omnipotent God that I tear off roofs. And at that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. I had no idea where and how we were going to go. Suddenly, people just started showing up, bringing food. A church, beautiful church, decorated their storage room, allowed the kids and I to stay there for a while. I had an organization that helped the children and I stay at a townhome for 3 months while I saved my money. Now, I can tell you that during that time, I did not have my ex-husband reach out, which we were divorced then, and say, hey, how can I help you and the kids? It was total strangers that were helping out, that were sewing into my children and I. I refuse to believe that my circumstances were going to define me. So where you are right now, I want you to know that it is not final. We consider ourselves, we're surviving. No, you're stronger than they are. They're insecure. They're powerless. They truly are. But our love and commitment is so great. Our heart is so big that we want to continue serving and giving. And we believe we can change people. We cannot. We only have the power to change ourselves and our circumstances, and owning how amazing and creative we are. You are stronger than what you're giving yourself credit. We truly are, because you're surviving this type of individual that subjects you to these things that you don't deserve. So I find myself going through all of this and reaching out to this man saying, can you help us? The kids and I have been homeless. We're staying at this place, but I'm trying to save my money. Nothing. Nada. There was no support from him at all. So I find myself moving to Ocoee, which is where I am now. It hasn't been easy. When I look back at the things that I experienced with this man, having to journal, I have journaled so much. That is one thing I encourage you ladies to do. Don't think that I didn't receive phone calls from him when he saw that Jessy had it, like, okay, she got it together. She has her job. She's, making okay money. She has her apartment. He would send me texts. I love you. Jessy, I want to talk to you. And I would ignore them. And guess what I would do? I would get my journal and I would write down the things that he would say to me, the things that he did to me, not to hurt myself with those thoughts and to take me to that memory, but for me to see the things that I accepted and the things that he said to remind me that he's still that same man. Because they'll lure you back. We'll find ourselves wanting to go back. No, the fact that here I am, a single woman now of 6 kids, oh my gosh, believe me, after 22 years, it's a whole new ballgame. But I followed through with that divorce. I filed and I followed through. I cannot tell you that the judge was someone that I have respect for. He was a male chauvinist. He got caught up on the degrees that he had. Here showed, this African-American man with his 3-piece suit, unbelievable, very, very eloquent type of man. And then he turns to me and says, so where did you go to college? Never asked or cared of who I was. So when I said, well, I just graduated high school, some college, he totally shifted and belittled me. And I found myself going through a divorce where I was going to have to be the one to pay him child support. And I had to figure out a way to get a lawyer. And the lawyer came in right on time where the child support services put the child support on him. $88 for 5 kids a month. That's how the system did it. But I refused to allow myself to be a victim because I knew that my God is my Jehovah Jireh. He's my provider, ladies. So if you're concerned about if I leave him, how I'm going to make it, if I leave him, where am I going to live? If I leave him, who's going to love me? You're going to love yourself. You have the ability to provide for yourself. You're intelligent. You are brilliant. I'm telling you things that I have to say to myself, and I repeat it to myself over and over and over. You're amazing. You are beautiful. You're unstoppable. You are powerful. You have to speak these things into your life, even if it's in tears, even if it's in the shower. I mean, I have probably cried more than the actual shower has actually washed me, but you have to stand in your power. You deserve to be happy. I can tell you that during this time, I was living in 2-bedroom apartments. I was sleeping on the couch. And today, oh man, I am in a place that I prayed for 7 years ago. It was a journey, and I have my own room. Something as simple that you'll be like, you have your own room. Gosh, yeah, I have my own room finally. And I moved here in January. So it's only been a couple of months. And I moved into this 3-bedroom when I realized that, wait a minute, Jessy, you deserve to have your own room. God has blessed you and allowed you to come to this place. It's been a process. It's going to be a process. All of the information that Nicole was sharing, all of the trauma, how did I handle the PTSD? Yes, I have journaled. I exercise. I make sure that I'm feeding my body, that I'm honoring my body. Even now, I challenged myself where I'm training for a bikini body competition in September. Ask me how training's going. Well, I get up at 4:10 in the morning every single day. I'm on my 9th week. I do my meal plan. You deserve to love yourself. You deserve to take the time and look in the mirror and say, you are beautiful. I say that right before I'm actually sitting on my bed. When I put my feet on the ground, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. You're beautiful. You are beautiful. Don't make you feel like you're less than. You're not. Love does not hurt, ladies. And I accepted that for 22 years of my life. 22 years. Now, am I worried about, will I find a man that's going to love me? No. After I got divorced, did I start, kind of like, hey, I want to know what it's like to date. My friends were all encouraging me. I kind of rushed. I really did, because I was carrying a lot of wounds. Make sure you give yourself space to heal as well. I started dating, and it was interesting because I didn't realize men could be that nice. Imagine that, being married for 2 decades of my life, the 2 years and a half, a year and a half that I dated him, and realizing that, whoa, and feeling awkward because the man is being kind and a gentleman. It was like, whoa. And then in my mind, like, he must want something because he's so kind or he's nice. And then being courageous and saying, you know what, I want to embrace and know what it's like to have sex again. That was a process, because having to heal from marital sex was it's uncomfortable. I recently shared on my Instagram on Friday about it, and it's opened up another place of reality of things I experienced. I don't regret that I dated, a couple of months after I got divorced. It was fun. But right now, where I am, I'm enjoying being alone. Being alone is not a bad thing. You're not lonely. So for whatever reason, the thoughts want to hit in your mind and say, you know what, you're going to be lonely. Nobody's going to want you. That's not true. That's not true. Love yourself. Stepping out, being bold, being courageous, filing those divorce documents, do it. It's about you. No one's going to show up for only you can show up for yourself. No one's going to love you like you. You have to do it because you deserve it. And those narcissist behaviors where they're gaslighting you, they're making you feel dumb, and then that honeymoon phase, oh, believe me, it was like a vicious cycle in my marriage. Vicious. Where the arguments would take place, and then he'll belittle me, and then he'll tell me, you don't know what you want to do, you don't have any education, you didn't even finish your college. I mean, it was all kind of crap he would say. Take shots at my family because none of them have degrees and he does. It was just a piece of garbage. And then suddenly he'll come back around. I know, Nicole, you mentioned about drinking whiskey. When I accepted him back during our 10th year anniversary, when I had first asked for the divorce, I literally would like get drunk almost every night for me to be able to lay in that bed with that man. So I've been there too. I used alcohol to pacify the reality that I just did not want to be with him. But guess what? I thought that this is part of the cross I have to bear. That was the last name that he has, two of my children have. So I'm like, hey, this is the cross I have to bear. No, it's not. No, it's not. And it's not going to be easy, but it is possible. I have pushed through. I never have lost hope. And even in this moment right now, I'm dealing with some court battles with him. And watching this narcissist domineering behavior, it's like, whoa, I am so glad I left you, because I no longer have to be subjected. And I have the joy and the freedom to close my door to my front, to my place. And no one can come in unless I allow them. I don't have to live in fear. I don't have to sit in the car while he's shouting and hitting the dashboard and screaming. And then guess what we would do? We show up to the church, we would hold hands, walk down the aisle, and pay our tithes. How hypocritical is that? Do you know how many masks I wore? When I gave birth to my son, Jerusalem, our sixth child, when Nicole was mentioning about how it affects your body, I weighed 216 pounds, size 20. That's how it affected me. I totally internalized it. If you saw a picture of how big I was so embarrassed. And he was thriving off of it because he knew I was being insecure. And then he thought I would not leave him because I had 6 kids. A lot of them will do that. But no, I refused to accept that into my life, because I knew that God created me for greatness. I knew God created my children for a purpose. He entrusted me with these children, the 6 of them. And during that time that I was bouncing from hotel and staying in places, I couldn't afford to really buy food. So I would get vegetables, I would blend them with water in those little bullet things at work, and I would drink it. People thought I was a salad girl, but they had no idea that I had to pacify hunger during that time so I could have rice and beans for my 6 kids. I figured out a way because I refused to believe that I was less than. And I accepted that for too many years in my life. So I really encourage you, ladies, to just walk in your light. Don't allow them to continue dimming it. Because we are salt of this earth and light of this world. You were created to be in love, to be love, to have joy, to be joy, and not to be oppressed or to be depressed because someone makes you second guess their love. No, that's not love. Not at all. So if you have to file those papers, file them. Own it. You deserve to have freedom. You deserve to just be in peace. I have peace. Something I cannot, gosh, I don't take it for granted. It's just the most amazing feeling. And guess what? I'm very zealous about my peace. I don't know. You will not come into my space. You will not. You will not. Now, do I have certain triggers? It happens. It happens. But then I have to allow myself to be in that feeling, which is what Nicole mentioned. It's okay to be in that feeling. Recognize it. You're human. It's normal. But don't allow that feeling to control you. Don't allow that feeling to take over your day. Give yourself that freedom to say, I'm hurting. I'm sad. I'm disappointed. I love him. But then shift into your power. I am strong. I deserve to be loved. I deserve to be in freedom. I deserve to be in peace. I deserve to heal. And it'll be a process. They're going to call you. You're going to want to hear their voice because, you know, it's like that feeling of like, okay, there's still a chance. No, they're controlling. And then they might come with a sad story. I miss you. I need you. I heard all of that during the time that I left him. But I made up my mind. And I said, I'm not going back. And it has been the best decision that I've done in my life. I came home last year. It was in January before the pandemic. And I had gone to church, had left my cell phone. My daughter, Jediah, because I have 2 girls and 4 boys, okay? She was doing her homework. Both girls are in college right now, 21, 19, and then I have 4 boys who are 16, 14, one just turned 12, and 7 years old. So my youngest daughter, last year in January, I find her crying when I'm coming back home from my cell phone. And I'm like, what's going on, Jediah? And she's like, you know, Mommy, I was thinking about the conversation I was having with my friends on the college campus, right? They were still, you know, able to go on campus. And she's like, and one of the kids was saying, I've never seen my parents bickering. And I had to tell him, that's all I remember. Fights, mama crying, screaming. So, you know, that conversation was not taking me to a happy place at that moment. And I'm like, And then my daughter went on to say, but you know what? I'm glad you left Daddy. Because had you stayed, I would have been like you were. But you leaving him, you allow me to see that I have a voice and that I matter. It was a tough one to hear my daughter say that by me leaving her dad, she's owning her voice. And that's what it's about, my ladies. Owning your voice, owning your power, standing up for yourself. You are an overcomer. You are able to do this. And it's not about who am I going to be with? No, don't worry about that. You'll get to be with yourself. You get to reconnect with that beautiful woman who has been robbed from feeling fully alive. I've been there. I was numb for the 20 years. I'll say more like the 15, because the first 5 years were fun while we were living in Miami. And everything my mother said he would be, he became. She passed away almost 11 years ago. And she told me that man will control you. He'll take you away from the family. And he's going to do whatever the hell he wants with you. And I thought, hey, mama, you're being racist. He's black. You don't like black people. Mm-mm. My mother was right. And I allowed myself to be controlled in so many ways. That's all I knew. That was my husband, my only boyfriend. And no, once I started owning more of who I was in Christ Jesus and walking in his truth and in his promises, then everything started shifting. And I still have to continue it. I still journal. I still shed tears because it's a process. But I remind myself, you did it, Jessy. And I'm able to share my story, which I tell my children, God will get the glory from our story. And it's taken me it's taken me away. I trusted him with all my money, my retirement, my 401k. He wanted to invest it. And guess what? I believed it and I gave him all my money. So I'm starting from scratch, but it's okay because I'm not building with man. I'm building with God, and he's providing for my children and I. So with that, I want to remind you that that same power is within you. That same courage is within you. You're able to push through. Stand up. Speak out. You have a phenomenal support system here. And we're here to just cheer you on because you got this. Step by step, you can do it. And it's hard to let go, but you can.
That was so powerful. Thank you so very much.
Amazing.
We went through that whole thing with you, crying, laughing. That was amazing. Thank you.
Oh, you
And
guys
you
are.
are amazing, and you are powerful, and you are beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. That is invaluable, and we really, really appreciate it.